Reynolds skips UNI ribbon cutting as protests draw hundreds. More than 100 protesters gathered. Did I say that? More than 100 protesters gathered outside to challenge their policies and expected presence. Reynolds was slated to speak at the opening of UNI's newly renovated Applied Engineering building, but event organizers announced at the start that she sends her regrets. A pre-recorded video message from the governor was played instead. No reason was given for her absence. Wow, I thought she would at least give a reason. And Iowa's News Now did not receive a response from her office, of course. Because why would they? Because she doesn't have to, right? And this is kind of the point that I wanted to start on. This is why I'm titling the episode, what I'm titling it, is, I think this podcast forever has been a huge critic of Kim Reynolds. Iowa has never been known to have a great government, great governors, right? But Kim Reynolds is just the absolute worst. Dialing back the clocks, before, or not, I shouldn't even say before, but even after all the, the things with her DUI record being completely expunged from all Iowa records, right? And, the hypocrisy of her stance on cannabis while, she has that history, how she, used her government power to really, not take the consequences really of her DUI things, right? And, I know I just got in a bunch of heat talking about the DUI stuff on Unhinged, like how, I'm not pro DUI, I'm not pro WI, I'm an anarchist, I don't believe in those things. However, I think it's important to point out the hypocrisy when you have a governor who puts these laws into effect and then they themselves break the laws. Not only break the laws themselves, but are not held accountable, do not have any recourse, or I should say have all the recourse in the world to avoid those consequences, right? When any other citizen of Iowa in that same situation would be, their life would be ruined, right, with a DUI. But not only was this woman's life not ruined, she is currently the governor of Iowa. She's been the governor of Iowa since 2016, 2017. And she just doesn't seem to be stopping. We're going to have an election here next year. We'll see what happens. But, with the hardcore Iowa religious Republican base that is in the state, people who would just mindlessly vote Republican because that's what they do. Not like the Democratic Party's any better, right? But, there's no thought into it, right? They're just like R all the way, right? She's probably going to win. She's probably going to win again. That's the sad reality. Hopefully that's not the case. Maybe she'll decide not to run. That would at least, I guess this was my previous point. In 2017, when she became the governor, God, who was the guy before? I can't remember. Branstad, maybe? Terry? I don't remember. But the governor before her was promoted by Trump to, I think, the director of foreign affairs or something like that. And Governor Reynolds was handpicked by him to replace him. So Kim Reynolds never got into this position by a vote. She was literally just handpicked, and people just continued to vote for her, not because they really voted for her, but they find the values of that party so important that they just need to continue it. I don't know. It's bullshit. But I think I wanted to highlight this first story. And then here's a roundabout way. I know I've been talking the roundabout way getting to the story, right? This is when you really start to see dystopian governments, when you really start to see the bridge between the public discourse and the government start to go further apart. That's when things get really dangerous. That's when the power of the government is really truly out of the hands of the people. It already is just as like a baseline, right? Like that's just how the whole system works. Like the people, we have this delusion that like the law abides by the people or is in control of the people. That's just not the case. It never has been. Even if you read back to like the revolutionary times of 1776 and all that. Shortly after that, all the liberty principles that started that war in the first place ended up just faltering because, people were like, oh, we need a government, right? And this is the same logic that has been coursing throughout history, right? It's something that's probably never going to stop. I wish it would, but it probably won't. But anyways, when you see something like this where Kim Reynolds, and I don't really care, I don't really give a shit if she shows up to this thing ultimately, but like the fact that she was going to go to this event, was going to be met with criticism, knew ahead of time that she was going to be met with protests and criticism. She didn't show up. She simply didn't show up. And instead, she played a video. I mean, how further away from 1984 do you have to be, right? The fact that she's just putting out, I mean, that's V for Vendetta shit. That's like, hey, the government's just going to put out a video, and it's the same thing that happened during COVID. She did the same thing during COVID. She just like, every day she was like, here's what you can do today. Here are the restrictions. I mean, this is hand in hand with this right here. I think this is just what I have. This just shows what I've been saying about this woman, that she doesn't want to actually abide by the people. She does not care about Iowans. She cares about her and her dollar, like her pocket, right? That's all her own interests. That's all she cares about. She does not care about Iowans. If she did actually care about Iowans, she would have gone. She would have spoken, right? And look, I mean, there aren't really that many politicians out there who like do face their supporters. So like, you know, whatever, right? To some extent, it's like, okay, like it's not really that surprising or like that egregious. But at the same time, it's just a symbol. It's symbolic as to what this government is just continually, like the steps that this government is continually doing. And, you know, Iowa is such a weird middle ground where it's like, in some instances, like, you know, I know they took out the traffic lights, which like kind of gives more power to the people, right? And gives the government less ability to like, you know, just give people arbitrary tickets. And, you know, like things where like you're cutting these government programs, right? Like as an anarchist, I think that's good. Like, so there are, I mean, the public in itself hates it, right? But like, you know, it's worth critically thinking about, right? Like, okay, you know, just cutting these benefits, it might, and we're going to talk about some of the SNAP stuff that got taken away recently too. But, you know, like these benefits, you know, get taken away, right? And that is disparaging to people, you know, people who rely on that. They're, you know, they don't have that anymore. And that's obviously going to cause problems. But I think it's worth, in the short term, I should say, but I think it's worth looking at the bigger picture where you see, you know, the economy, it will actually help the economy if you lessen spending, if you lessen taxes. That makes things cheaper. And then those families who rely on that are now more able to afford that, right? And that's a long-term goal. And people don't like that. People want the short term. They want the Band-Aid solution. So that's a very hard thing. As someone with my political views, it's hard to interact with people and not come off as an asshole. I've said this a million times. People who know the show know that. But anyway, let's get into this. Let's just talk about some of the... So instead of going to this protest or this ribbon cutting ceremony, I think it was, what was it, for a building? It was like the agricultural building. I think that's what I just read. Whatever. Like, you know, instead of doing that, she essentially did what government does best and just create laws and restrictions and, you know, take people's freedoms away.